We're good. Right, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Sai. We are, Baruch Hashem, together once again, learning a little bit of the lights of Rav Kook's Chosei Yagad Aleinu. We left off last week with, after our brief introduction, all too brief introduction into a religion, and that is not what the Torah intended. And much of what Rav Kook is going to be speaking to us about in Oros HaTechiyah and in general, Rav Kook speaks about this throughout, is the idea of the Jewish people once again becoming a people, not just a religion, but having some kind of national identity, and not just some kind of national identity, but the national identity that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants human beings to have. But before we can jump into this piece, I want to just pass up the following thought experiment. Marshall, if you will humor me for a moment. Imagine that you have a professor of whatever, let's say the Incas. There's no Incas in the audience, I don't believe, right? Nobody here is like yichus to the ancient Incas. Alta Zedi was an Inca, right? I don't think so. But I don't think anybody has any yichus to Incas. I don't think that right?
He was a Spinker, right?
Spinker, that's different. That's the other side of the family. No, it's Aztecs, no Incas, no Mayans in the room. Good. But imagine that you have a professor that is like the Gadol of Incas. He's like, that's his whole everything. His whole life. He studied the Incas. And he has spent decades. He's like the Gadol of like Incaology. I don't know what it's called, whatever, right? The Incologist. He's the best, the Incologist. He's the best in the world. And he has learned how to dress like an ancient Inca, and he has learned how to speak, and he can decode their language, and he's gone to all of the ancient historical sites, and is, and he loves the culture, and he loves the idea, and around the table, his kids are annoyed at him, but he speaks to them in Inca, and they're aggravated by it. And his wife is like, yeah, my husband and his Meshuggah Inca stuff, but he loves it. It's Gewaldig, it's Murdig. Imagine if that guy, the Gadol of Incas in the world, he knows everything about the Incas. He knows their calendar, and he knows their language, and he knows their culture, and he knows their religion, and he knows their practices, and he knows their rituals, and Hakol. Look at Sir, he would get into a time machine, and he would go back to the time of the Incas, and meet like a 7-year-old Inca boy. So he would be blown over. That's it. There we go. Okay. Later, he would meet this 7-year-old Inca boy. He would be like spoiled from this whole thing. What would the 7-year-old Inca boy think of this guy?
Just another Inca.
What? He's? Yeah.
Too late to make this was. Too late to dedicate this year.
No, you can certainly dedicate the shir. The shir is dedicated in memory of
tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night of
Yaakov and Tzvi Halevi.
Yaakov and Tzvi Halevi. Baltimore. So imagine for a second that this guy would meet this Inca boy, but the Inca boy would look at this guy. What would he say to him? The guy would be like, "Oh my gosh, you're like an Inca boy. You're amazing. This is gewaldig." And he would start asking him all about this Inca stuff, and showing off what he knows. What would the Inca boy think about this guy? He's a phony. Right? He's a phony. What a loser, right? What are you trying to pretend? I get it. You've studied all of it, but you're not an Inca. You're not an Inca. Why is he not an Inca? What makes him not an Inca?
Was born in the culture of the people.
So it's not his place. So Lu Yitzur, it would this man would come across a real Inca. The Inca would look at him and go, "You're a Meshugana. You're a Meshugana. You're not real." And I think it was the Gra who said that he can imagine. The Gra lived, of course, in Vilna in the 1700s. He said, I can imagine what it was like to be a Rishon. He says, I can imagine what it was like to be an Amora. I could even maybe imagine what it's like to have thought like a Tana. He said, but to be a farmer in the days of David HaMelech, I have no musag what that is. I have no idea what it would be to be a farmer in the days of David HaMelech. I mean, it's not something that we've seen. We don't know what that is. To live in a world of Nevuah, to live in a world of Malchus. We're mufka from that whole thing. Like, we're not part of that story. I mean, we're part of that story. But like, it's so foreign to us. A lot of things have happened from there until today. Ad kedei kach that it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine what that might have been like. There's a sefer that a number of years ago I spent some time perusing around the back of it. The sefer is called Nari Eish. Anybody here heard of the sefer Nari Eish? It's yeah, Rav Shimon Zelach, right? Who was Rav Shimon? He was the mashkiach of Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin. When Ramesh Shapiro was the Rosh Yeshiva. He was known as the biggest baki in Europe before the war. He was a Gaon Olam. He was like a real genius. Yeah, he had two very famous Talmidim that survived the war. One of them was Pinchas Hirschsprung, and the other was Rav Vazna, the Shevet HaLevi. Those were his Talmidim Muvakim that survived the war. And at the back of the Sefer, they have Likutei Diburim, and they have stories, and they have stuff that he told over to the Talmidim. And one of the meisim that they have at the back is that there was like one, Chabura, Farbrengen, whatever it was, that he sat down and he was talking about the godless of the Baal Shem HaKadosh, greatness of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov had a number of Rebbeim in this world and a number of Rebbeim that came from the next world. His Rebbe from the next world was HaTechiyah Shiloni. HaTechiyah Shiloni was the Rebbe not just of the Baal Shem Tov, but before that he was the Rebbe of Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi was the Rebbe of Eliyahu Navi, and he was a Levi. Chazal said that HaTechiyah Shiloni was one of the Yotzei Mitzrayim. He lived a very, very long time. And he was the Rebbe of Eliyahu Navi, and he's one of the Balei HaMasorah, one of the list of the Balei HaMasorah. He's one of the major points in the Masorah. Came out of Egypt, knew Moshe Rabbeinu, knew David HaMelech, knew Eliyahu Navi. His primary Talmud in the days of Eliyahu Navi went off the derech. It was Yerovam ben Nebat. That was his primary Talmud. There's a lot in Chassidus about why it is that the Rebbe of Eliyahu Navi needs to be the Rebbe of the Baal Shem Tov needs to be the Rebbe of Yerovam ben Nebat, who went off the derech. But that's for another day. The Masorah is, and we have this listed in Tanakh and in Chazal, that HaTechiyah Shiloni was a Levi, and he was one of the Leviim that had Shmira in the Beis Hamikdash. So those that are learning Zvachim at the moment, or those that have learned Tamid, so there was Mishmaris in the Beis Hamikdash. The Kohanim had the Mishmaris, and there were Leviim that had duties in the Beis Hamikdash. HaTechiyah Shiloni was one of the Leviim that would guard the Beis Hamikdash at night. And Rav Shimon once said to the Talmidim, he said, "Can you imagine what it must have been like? Can you even begin to comprehend, to contend with what it must have been like for HaTechiyah Shiloni to be alone in the Beis Hamikdash on a cold winter night, when he locked the doors and he was doing guard duty and he was circling the Azara, the ideas and understandings that he must have had of the Ribono Shel Olam and of the world in that space at that time. He says, we have no idea what that must have been like. to have been there. Like, what was that? What was that we have no idea. It's something that is far away from the way that we normatively think about the world, the way that we understand the world. Being for us godless, and I don't want to minimize this, Khalil, but when people talk about godless, what does it mean to be a great Jew? So to be a great Jew by us, and again, I'm not minimizing, but it means like a gun that can do like a pin test through like all of Shas. That's a great Jew. Or like what Rav Shmuel said once he complained to Ramesh Shapiro. He said to him, as he was getting a little older, he said, my memory's not what it used to be. So Ramesh Shapiro started laughing. He said to him, Rav Shmuel, I don't understand. What do you mean your memory's not what it used to be? You know from brachas to nida bal peh. Bal peh, every single word of Shas. You know bal peh. So he said, yes, but when I was younger, I could say over all of Shas according to each of the Rishonim. I could say over from Brachas and Talnida according to Rashi, and from Brachas to Nida according to Rabbeinu Tam, and according to the Rashbam, and according to the Rambam, and according to the Rashba, and according to the Ramban, and according to the Rosh, and according to the Rash. I could say it all over, each Shita, the whole of Shas. He said, and now it's a little bit difficult to remember all the Shitas. My memory's not what Alavai, right? Alavai, we should be zeichet. And again, I don't want to minimize this even one drop. But that's not even 1% of 1% of 1% of what it meant to be a Navi. You understand what I'm saying? Meaning, it's not to know all of Shas Baal Peh with all of the shittas, all of the Rishonim and Acharim was like Shlav Aleph in Nevuah school. Like the Rambam writes in Torah that once you finish going to Teresh B'chsav and Teresh Baal Peh school, so then you could get your PhD in Navi school. You went to the schools of Nevuah. And those are called the B'nai HaNaviim. And you would learn how to be a Navi. And how many Nevi'im were there? Kiflaim ki Yotzi Mitzrayim. We have 48 listed Nevi'im, 7 listed Nevi'as. But the Gemara in the Masechet Megillah tells us there were more Nevi'im. Kiflaim ki Yotzi Mitzrayim means that there were, conservatively, 1.2 million Nevi'im that the Jewish people had. Most of those Nevuos, the vast majority of those Nevuos, were not Nitzrach Aladoris. They weren't necessary for all future generations. They were necessary for that time period. No, Shkaya. For those people at that time period, but that was the relationship that Jews had with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it was Kala Torah Kula, and then it was a deep, profound, intimate relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that was above and beyond anything that we could possibly comprehend. It's like, that's the world that Rav Kook is dreaming of. Because that's where we need to get to. Meaning, and again, with all due respect, and not to minimize it, but Lu Yitzur, every single bacha that is currently enrolled in every yeshiva would be Baki and Babli, Yerushalmi, Sifra, Sifrei, Mechilta, Taras Kanim, meaning in all the works of the Tanaim and the Amoraim and all the works of the Rishonim and Achronim, it's still not the same thing, not even nearly the same thing as Nevi'im and B'nai Nevi'im. It's just not the same thing. And so Rav Kook wants to tell us a story. This is in Oros HaTechiyah Perek Hey, and we'll just see the beginning of it. He's got a line here which is, you're going to love this particular line, the last line of the first paragraph here. But he says as follows: Darkeinu b'chaim haleumiyim v'tzidudam klapei hayachas ha'enoshi klali arukahi me'od. It means our way of life on a national level, and all of the steps and all of the pieces of this, with regards to the relationship that we have to humanity as a whole. Arukahi me'od. It is very, very long. We have a very, very long history. We've been doing this for a long time.
That word yachas, what does it mean?
Yachas is what we would put with the samach.
Instead of samach.
Yeah. So he says, Arukim heim chayenu, our lives are very long. Varukim heim darkenu, and as long as they are, so too is our derech. Our derech is very, very long. I had a conversation a number of years ago, which was probably more chutzpahdik than it should have been. But I met with a wonderful guy who's since passed. A wonderful guy who was very involved in the Reform community in America for many, many years. Really, an HaTechiyah, really a very, very special guy. And we would like debate from time to time back and forth about Torah and mitzvahs. And he lamented to me the fact that none of his grandchildren are Jewish. He recognized that was like something chaser in everything that he had done. He had no Jewish grandchildren. And I would like argue back with him, and he looked at me, him being probably 60 years older than me. He looked at me at one point in time, like, to pull the I'm older than you card, which is a valid card to play, but not in this context. Because he said to me, young man, how old are you? So I said to him, how old are you? He was like 92, 93 at that point. He said, no, and how old are you? I said, I'm at least 3,500 years old. I'm at least 3,500 years old. Maybe a little older. I mean, not me, but me. Like the thing. Like the thing that, like, I'm standing up here saying. Like, it's not, this is what Rav Kook is saying, our lives are arukim heim, I mean, we've been here for a long time. Like this thing called Yiddishkeit in Tafshin Pei Vav is not brand new. It didn't start this year. It didn't come from nothing. It started from something. And that something is very, very ancient. Like we've been here a really, really long time. And we've gone through a lot in that long period of time. And so Rav Kook writes, and this line is chef's kiss. He says, Gedolim anachnu, we are enormous. We are great. We're huge. Ugedolis heina mishugaseinu, and therefore our mishugayim are equally great. Meaning we're great, and therefore our craziness is great too. Meaning when a yid goes meshuga, it's very meshuga. Like we're commensurate with our greatness is our insanity. So he says, Vishvil kach, and therefore gedolos heima tzarasenu, and therefore our tzaras are also enormous. Ugedolim heim gam tanchumoisenu, and therefore our tanchumim, the comfort, the restoration that we will achieve is also enormous. Meaning that's the arc of this great history of the Jewish people. We're very, very big. Very big. And therefore the things that we get wrong, when we get them wrong, are very big. And therefore the tzaras that happen to us are very big. And the stuff that's going to get good is going to be very big too. And there's something to take note of here. And this is going to sound a little weird, so I apologize. There's a lot to talk about that people talk about why it is that people keep on attacking the Jews. Like, why the Jews, right? Like, why us? Why do people keep on trying to destroy us? And I'll tell you the answer. And the answer is underwhelming. The reason that people keep on trying to destroy us is no different than the reason that nations have been trying to destroy each other since the beginning of history. There is one very big difference. And that big difference is, we don't die. Meaning, the reason that there's no Incas today is because when the conquistadors arrived in South America with horses and smallpox, there's no more Incas. So Nigmar.
There's also another big difference. More so after the Garden, they have no land to conquer, yet still they hate us.
Push it.
They
But-
still
but-
want to destroy us.
But I understand
What
that.
are they going to gain by that?
I'm saying
One nation throwing another nation, they're gaining their land.
that's true. But even nations that didn't have land, the ethnic minorities that have been the Havtach that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made to Avraham Avinu, that you will be eternal, you will live forever, is our greatest bracha and our greatest curse. Because every other nation, when you conquer them, they die. Klal Yisrael, when you conquer us, we come back. Nachamol to be conquered, and Nachamol to be conquered. Meaning, it's impossible to kill us. What's the reason that we have been subjugated for the last 2,500? Because we don't die. Because Gedolim Anachnu, we're ancient, and we're going to be here forever. This is just a question of at what point in time we get this right. You understand what I'm saying? This is the reason that they keep on trying to kill us is because it didn't work. And that's HaTechiyah Baruch Hu made to Avraham. That's the beginning, middle, and end of the story. HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avraham Avinu, you're not going to die. That's it. It's Medrash Rabbah in Parashat Lech Lecha. Bris Ben B'Sarim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avraham Avinu, choose. What happens when your children mess up? Do you want Golus or do you want Gehenna? And this is Machlokes in the Midrashim, which one Avraham chose and which one HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose. But Tzachakol, the Askama was, everybody agreed. We're masking that it's going to be Golus. Means you'll be eternal. You'll be eternal, you're not going to die, you're going to live forever. What happens if you mess up? So there's this thing called Golus that will straighten you out until you figure it out. Until you get it right again. That's the story. Arukim heim chayenu. We are very, very old, we're ancient, and we will live for eternity. And so far, it's true. Every other nation, once it gets conquered, nigmar ha'inyan. It's over. From the Romans to the Greeks to the Persians, the Babylonians, and the Medes, every empire rises and falls. They're gone, but the Jews are here. So why? Because we don't die. And so Rav Kook tells us as follows: the beginning of the next paragraph. The first thing that people get existentially wrong is it is a fundamental error to backtrack from that thing that makes us us. Which is to renege, to go back on our deepest fundamental identity, which is that we are chosen by God. To be a Jew means to know that you are chosen by God. How does it go wrong? He says, we are not just different from every other nation. We are fundamentally different from every other nation throughout history. There is no other example of a nation like us. No language, no culture, no nation. He says, Ki gam, it's true. He says, Ki im gam me'ulim gedalim me'od mikol, and we are also greater than every other nation. And it's like not betumt to say this in polite company today, that the Jewish people are better. Everybody goes, oh, you're racist. Racist. How could you? Rav Kook is saying, but it's a pasuk in Chumash. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, V'yisim li am segula. You are my chosen people. That's it. That's the beginning, middle, and end of the story. You are. We say this every year. You say, you chose us. It says, and we, it's talking polite European Jews, we're like, nah, it doesn't mean chosen, it doesn't mean special, it just means, because what are you talking about? Am HaNivchar means Am HaNivchar. It says, Im nida es gedula seinu, and if we know how great we are, as yodim anu es atzmeinu, then we know ourselves. Vim nishkach es godleinu, and if we forget how great we are, anu shechachim es atzmeinu, then we forget ourselves. Va'am sheishkach es atzmai, and a nation that forgets itself, and this is his kicker here, this is bevadei hu katan b'shafar. A nation that forgets its basic nature is for sure the lowest of the low and the weakest of the weak, the smallest of the small. Meaning, we don't have an in-between. Either we recognize how great we are, or we fail to recognize how great we are, and then we are the smallest of the small. You can't have it both ways. You can't be, no, we're like kind of like in the, no. There's not paravir. To be the Jewish people means that the Jewish people is, and if not, then we're at the bottom of the barrel. רק בשכחת עצמנו, הנה נשארים כתנו שפלים, ושכחת עצמנו, היא שכחת גדולתנו. And the opposite is true as well. When we forget ourselves, then we remain, and this is the world that he's talking to, then we remain small, downtrodden, and lowly. Forgetting ourselves is forgetting our greatness. And now the question arises, well, what does it mean to be the chosen people? What does that look like? And the first thing that we will note, just spoiler for next week, to be Am Hanivchar means to be an Am. That's what it means. You've got to be an Am. You have to be an Am. You have to be a nation. Which means somehow or another, that includes a nationality and sovereignty, and an army, and a culture, and a language, and art, and poetry, and literature, and culture. That's what it means to be a nation. It's part and parcel of the picture. Am Hanivchar. Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach. To be continued next week. Have yourselves a wonderful day.
One question, if you want to
Sure.
at the beginning,